One of the scenarios is, of course, a very dark scenario, and Jeff writes about this in his book, because the trend is obviously socialist. The trend is it's obviously going to revolutions like we see in France, Lebanon, the United States, South America. It's everywhere. You can feel it, and it will lead to war, the Third World War. So that's a very dark scenario, and you have to hedge or be prepared for that as an investor. So those scenarios are on the table.
A deflationary world would lead us to abundance, as Jeff Booth explains in his book, The Price of Tomorrow. But central banks don't want to lose their power. Let's hear what Jeff Booth has to say about it.
The book, you mentioned it, is called The Price of Tomorrow, Why Technology is Key to an Abundant Future. And it's about what's happening in the world today through the lens of, you see the divide in political spectrums, you see the divide of the social contract in our world breaking down. And it can be pulled back to technology is deflationary. And that's not a guess, that's a fact. And it rides an exponential wave of deflation. And so what that means is we should be seeing lower and lower cost and higher and higher gains, abundance everywhere in our world. And why we're not is because central governments and monetary stimulus around the world is trying to prevent that, because we've grown up in a world where inflation reigns, and we can't see that deflation could be a good thing.
All these factors are at the root of the rising extremism globally. It is driven by inequality and loss of hope that come from economic disparities. People do not naturally hate others when they're content or have abundance. They are manipulated into it when they feel discounted or that they have nothing to lose. When any group is experiencing what they believe is unjust, it is easy to consolidate power from that same disillusionment. So, one question remains. Why no one is seeing what's happening? Why do central banks keep printing money and creating gigantic piles of debt?
Why so few people? So PlanB wrote an awesome article talking about phase transitions. And so when you get into physics and you talk about how a phase transition happens, we could talk about how ice turns into liquid and then liquid turns into gas. Well, if you're a liquid molecule, right, and you've always been within that temperature range of a liquid molecule, all you know is that's what you look like, right? And that's what I would describe as our current financial system. If you're working on Wall Street and you've been playing the Wall Street game for 30 years, that you think you're a liquid molecule. Now, what happens is, and what's so fascinating with a phase transition is to make the jump to a gas, from a liquid to a gas, there has to be a ton of energy that's packed into it, right? And during that period of time, as that transition's happening, more energy, but it still looks like a liquid. It hasn't made the jump to its new state of what it looks like. And then all at once, it's just boom, now all of a sudden it's a gas molecule and it's bouncing around the room, and it looks nothing like a liquid molecule like it used to be. Even though it's the same exact thing, it looks completely different. I think that's the only way I can describe what's happening right now is everybody in the world that's alive has never seen anything other than what we've seen, which is an inflationary monetary policy for our entire lives, right? So for them to understand an equity-based monetary system that, is deflationary if people are losing their coins, right? That does not make sense to anybody walking the planet today.
Domestic issues always take precedent over international ones, which means a system that is controlled by one nation and is the backbone of all other currencies might work for a time until the country's domestic issues force it to unilaterally deliver economic benefit to the nation in control of the currency while hurting all others. Once trust is broken in that exchange, game theory predicts actions by other countries will encourage the growth of their own currencies, and all hell breaks loose because international cooperation is lost. So, the question is, what's the alternative?
I think this is the first time you've had the scenario where a new monetary policy globally can be supplied prior to it ever coming to a shot or a fight between anybody. And I don't think that's ever been the case throughout history, that's been an opportunity that could have happened. So let's walk the dog. So let's say the price starts blowing out in Bitcoin in the coming year, and you see these people that are owning yielding nothing securities, and particularly in the fixed income market, they start swapping over. The first movers, the Michael Saylors of the world, make out like bandits. He basically captures 83 years worth of net income onto his balance sheet in 1 year because of his decision. He now has the ability to buy up his competitors upstream, downstream, right? And you see this massive change in the redistribution of wealth, but not through a military conflict throughout history. So I think that if I was going to talk about this array of potential outcomes coming in the future, clearly everything that they've described is in that array of outcomes, right? I also believe that there might be a more peaceful. I don't think that transition is going to be fun for most participants, the majority of participants. It's going to be a very painful transition because you're going to see people who literally become extraordinarily wealthy in short order, and you're going to see people that are extremely wealthy that lose a significant portion of that buying power relative to what they had in short order. But maybe it's not this armed conflict between nations, because this is something that is stretching across the whole globe.
So if you think about this, and again, go back to the root. The root is technology is deflationary, right? The root is, if you allowed a capitalist society, a free market society, to work under that, you would have broad-based abundance, right? It wouldn't consolidate. As jobs came out of the market, people would work less, saving time, and prices would fall along that axiom. Nothing that central governments can do, and I'm going to say it again, nothing will stop that from being true. All of the printing just warps capitalism and predictably rises to socialism, and predictably rises to where we are right now in the cycle. And predictably will break. Very rarely a business does what it needs to do against a massive technological sea change, right? Sears goes bankrupt because they don't see what's happening with Amazon, right? It happens all of the time in industry. The industry is creative destruction. The people in the system don't see it. There's a change, and a new system takes over. And although that system is grasping for air, right? It's trying to whatever it can do to keep the system alive. Interest rate policy, printing of money, is all of those things on a last leg of an old system, trying to keep the system alive, to exactly Plan B and Preston's point, that they have to, because if they let deflation happen right now and the real cost of debt goes up, all the banks fail.
There is a principle in philosophy called Occam's razor: a simpler solution is more likely to be correct than a complex one. It makes intuitive sense. Complexity makes us prone to error. What if the natural order of things was permitted? What if, instead of trying to stop deflation at all costs, we embrace it? This solution, while simple in theory, has a number of potential limitations. For one thing, would governments around the world allow it to happen? Governments and central banks exert tremendous influence on their economies and citizens with their ability to control money supply. It's not likely that they would voluntarily give up that control to a new world currency that is unable to be manipulated. While I am sure that governments will not voluntarily give up control of their currencies, if there is not a coordinated international effort on a Bretton Woods type of framework that establishes rules around currency exchange rates, it will happen regardless. Just in a different way. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to click like on the button below and the subscribe button.